My name is Dahlia Grayson. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how my life spiraled into something I could never have imagined, a story filled with betrayal, obsession, and revenge. When I first married my husband Richard, the first believed I had secured stability, comfort, and maybe even love, but as time passed, I began to realize that what we had wasn't love at all. It was a carefully constructed arrangement. Richard was a powerful corporate figure, controlling, manipulative, and cold, and I was expected to play the role of the perfect wife, smiling at dinner parties, attending events, and standing silently by his side as his trophy. But behind closed doors, the cracks in our marriage grew deeper, and I began to see just how cruel he could be when no one was watching. He demanded perfection, criticized every flaw, and treated me like a possession rather than a partner. I endured it for years, convincing myself that leaving would be worse, that the world outside would never understand the woman who walked away from the perfect life everyone envied. What I didn't know was that the real nightmare wouldn't come directly from him. It would come from someone much closer, someone I trusted far too much. At Richard's office, I became acquainted with many of his colleagues, and through them their families. That's when I met his assistant's wife, a kind and gentle woman who seemed to carry her own quiet sadness. She often reached out to me almost as if she sensed my loneliness, and at first I welcomed her friendship. Little did I know her intentions were far from pure. She wasn't reaching out because she cared. She was watching, learning, waiting. And slowly she began to weave herself into my life in ways I never could have anticipated. By the time I realized what she was truly after, it was already too late. As weeks passed, my strange new friend, her name was Clara, seemed to be everywhere I turned. At first her presence felt comforting. She would drop by with coffee when she knew Richard was away, or offer to take me shopping just to get me out of the house. She confided in me about her difficult marriage to Richard's assistant, describing how he belittled her. It made her feel invisible, and in turn, I began to share small pieces of my own unhappiness. It felt like two women trapped in cages, quietly seeking solace in each other's company. But slowly Clara began to push boundaries. She would make comments about how I deserved someone who truly adored me, someone who would protect me at all costs. Once she even touched my hand and whispered, "If I were your husband, I'd never let you feel this way." I brushed it off as kindness, but something about the intensity in her eyes unsettled me. Soon she started knowing things I had never told her, things about my private arguments with Richard, details about where I went during the day, even the clothes I wore when I thought no one was around. One evening I came home to find a bouquet of roses waiting for me unsigned, but I knew they weren't from Richard. The handwriting on the small card looked eerily like Clara's. I felt my stomach twist. I tried to distance myself, but that only seemed to draw her closer. She began calling late at night, sometimes saying nothing at all, sometimes breathing into the phone, until I hung up in fear. And then came the photographs. One morning, slipped under my front door, was a picture of me asleep in my bed, taken from inside my room. My blood ran cold as I realized Clara had crossed a line I could never ignore. I wanted to go to Richard, but what would he say? He'd accuse me of exaggerating, of inventing stories just to gain sympathy. Clara had positioned herself perfectly, sweet, helpful, trustworthy in everyone else's eyes, while making me look unstable. I knew then that if I didn't act, I would lose not only my sanity, but maybe my life. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that maybe the photo under my door had some other explanation, but deep down I knew the truth. Clara was watching me, following me, breathing down my neck with a twisted kind of devotion. The more I pulled away, the more dangerous she became. At a company dinner, she slipped into the seat beside me, smiling sweetly, while her hand lingered too long on my shoulder. Richard noticed, but only smirked as if it were nothing. Later that night, when I went to the ladies' room, Clara followed me inside. She cornered me against the sink and whispered, "You're wasting yourself with him. He doesn't see you, but I do. I've always seen you." Her voice shook with something between desire and madness. When I told her to stop, her smile cracked, and I caught a glimpse of raw anger hiding beneath the mask. That night I barely slept. Every shadow in the room felt like her eyes staring through me. My paranoia drove me to search for answers, and what I found made my skin crawl. Clara wasn't married at all. There was no husband, no assistant she had ever mentioned. Every story she'd fed me was a lie. She'd been obsessed with Richard first, then turned her fixation onto me, weaving herself into our lives with calculated precision. I even found old photographs on a hidden social media profile, ones she had taken of me from a distance, dating back months before we ever met. She had been watching me all along, planning this. The realization nearly broke me. I wanted to run, but where could I go? She was always there at the market, On the street, even once outside my bedroom window at midnight, I reported it to Richard, finally desperate, but he laughed, brushing it off as my dramatic imagination. That was when I understood Clara's greatest weapon. She had made me look unstable while she appeared harmless and sweet. I was alone in this nightmare. My fear twisted into something darker, rage if no one would believe me. I would have to outsmart her myself, but Clara must have sensed my change of heart, because the next day I woke up to find a message written on my bathroom mirror in red lipstick. "You can't hide from me, Dahlia. We belong together." The message on my bathroom mirror wasn't just a threat, it was Clara's declaration of war. My hands trembled as I wiped the lipstick off, but in that moment I made a choice. If Clara wanted me, if she thought she owned me, then I would show her just how wrong she was. For weeks, I pretended to give in, playing along with her obsession, allowing her to believe I was breaking under the weight of her attention. I smiled when she left notes in my purse. I didn't resist when her hand brushed mine, and I even let her sit close, whispering her twisted fantasies in my ear. What Clara didn't realize was that I was watching her just as closely, learning her weaknesses, her fears, her routines. She wasn't careful anymore. Her obsession blinded her, and that was her downfall. One night, I invited her over under the pretense of finally wanting to talk. I told Richard the first was sick and stayed in the guest house at the edge of our property where Clara thought we would be alone. She came dressed in black, her eyes glinting with excitement like she was walking into a secret rendezvous, but when she stepped inside, she found candles flickering, mirrors covered, and the air thick with silence. I had staged it all to make her feel the same unease she had forced on me for months. She laughed nervously, asking if I was trying to scare her, but her voice cracked. When I locked the door behind her, I confronted her. Then every lie, every picture, every time she stalked me, cornered me, violated my life. She tried to twist it back, saying it was love, that Richard didn't deserve me, that she was the only one who truly understood me, but her words only fueled the fire in my chest. I pulled out the envelope of photos I had collected, the ones she'd taken of me without my knowledge, and scattered them at her feet. "This isn't love, Clara," I hissed. "Obsession and obsessions end badly." She lunged at me, then her hands grasping at my neck, eyes wild with desperation. But I had prepared for this moment. I swung the heavy iron candlestick I had hidden behind me, and it connected with her skull. With a sickening crack, she crumpled, but she was still breathing, still whispering my name as though I belonged to her. I stood over her, my heart pounding, and in that instant, I felt no fear, only power. Clara was taken away that night, screaming, clawing at the officers as they dragged her out of my home. They found evidence in her apartment walls covered in photos of me, recordings of my voice diaries, filled with fantasies about our life together. Richard finally believed me, but by then his belief didn't matter. I wasn't the naive woman I'd been when this started. Clara thought she could control me with her obsession, but instead she'd awakened something darker inside me. I had faced the monster and destroyed it. But late at night, when the wind rattles the windows, I sometimes wonder if I truly destroyed Clara, or if she's still out there watching, waiting, whispering my name in the dark. Thanks for watching my video. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Dark Life Side Diaries, thank you.